Hello everyone, we are from Group 12 and this is our presentation about translation procedures. So, here are the names of our members. The first one is Tania Ramadhani, the second one is Nida Asri, and then the last one is Nurul Aini. Some of the procedures proposed by prominent experts. The first one is from Nida. Nida describes the translating procedures as follows. Number 1. Technical procedures. Technical procedures introduce analysis of the source and target language, a true study of the source language text before making attempts to translate it, and making judgments of the semantic and syntactic approximations. Number 2. Organizational procedures. Organizational procedures introduce constant reevaluation of the attempt made, contrasting it with the existing available translations of the same text done by other translators, and checking the text's communicative effectiveness by asking the target language readers to evaluate its accuracy and effectiveness and studying their reactions. The second one, procedures proposed by Venuti. Venuti indicates that translation strategies involve the basic task of choosing the foreign text to be translated and developing a method to translate it, he said. He employs the concepts of domesticating and foreignizing to refer to translation strategies. And then the last one, procedures proposed by Bell, differentiates between global, those dealing with whole text, and local, those dealing with text segments, strategies, and confirms that this distinction results from various kinds of translation problems. The difference between translation methods and translation procedures. Newmark mentions the difference between translation methods and translation procedures. He writes that, while translation methods relate to whole text, translation procedures are used for sentences and the smaller units of language. Translation methods according to Newmark. Number 1. Word-for-word translation, in which the SL word order is preserved and the words translated singly by their most common meanings, out of context. Number 2. Literal translation, in which the SL grammatical constructions are converted to their nearest TL equivalents, but the lexical words are again translated singly, out of context. Number 3. Faithful translation. It attempts to produce the precise contextual meaning of the original within the constraints of the TL grammatical structures. Number 4. Semantic translation, which differs from faithful translation only in as far as it must take more account of the aesthetic value of the SL text. Number 5. Adaptation, which is the first form of translation and is used mainly for plays, comedies, and poetry. The themes, characters, plots are usually preserved. The SL culture is converted to the TL culture and the text is rewritten. Number 6. Free translation. It produces the TL text without the style, form, or content of the original. Number 6. Idiomatic translation. It reproduces the message of the original but tends to distort nuances of meaning by preferring colloquialisms and items where these do not exist in the original. Number 8. Communicative translation. It attempts to render the exact contextual meaning of the original in such a way that both content and language are readily acceptable and comprehensible to the readership.
Procedure of translating culture-specific concept. Culture-specific concept, according to Becker, refers to a concept which is totally unknown in the target culture. The concept may be abstract or concrete and relate a religious belief, a social custom, or even a type of food. Examples of culture-specific concepts are the English word privacy, the Japanese pekewu, the Indonesian word segan. Gradler, quote in ordinary, put for some procedure of translating culture-specific concept. 1. Making up a new word. 2. Explaining the meaning of the SL expression in light of translating it. 3. Preserving the SL term intact. 4. Opting for a word in the TL which seems similar to or has the same relevance as the SL term. Technique for translating culture-bound terms. Defining culture-bound terms as the terms which refer to concept, institution, and personnel which are specific to the SL culture. Harvey, quoted in ordinary, puts forward the following four major techniques for translating CBTS. 1. Functional equivalence. It means using a referent in TL culture whose function is similar to that of the source language referent. 2. Formal equivalence or linguistic equivalence. It means a word-for-word translation. 3. Transcription or borrowing. It stands at the far end of SL-oriented strategies. If the term is formally transparent or is explained in the context, it may be used alone. In other cases, particularly where no knowledge of the SL by the reader is present, transcription is accompanied by an explanation or a translator note. 4. Descriptive or self-explanatory translation. It uses generic terms, not CBTS, to convey the meaning. It is appropriate in a wide variety of contexts where formal equivalence is considered insufficiently clear. Finney and Darbonet's translation procedure. 7. Procedure. Finney and Darbonet's categorization of translation procedure is very detailed. They named two methods covering 7 procedures. 1. Direct translation, which cover borrowing, calque, and literal translation. And 2. Oblique translation, which is transposition, modulation, equivalence, and adaptation. These procedures are applied on 3 levels of language. A. The lexicon. B. The grammatical structure. And C. The message, which is used to refer to the situational utterance and some of the higher text elements such as sentence and paragraphs. Procedure 1. Borrowing. To overcome a lacuna, usually a metalinguistic one. Borrowing is the simple of all translation methods. For instance, in order to introduce the flavor of the SL culture into a translation, foreign terms may be used. Procedure 2. Calque. A calque is a special kind of borrowing whereby a language borrows an expression from the another, but then translates literally each of its elements. The result is either 1. A lexical calque, as in the first example below, calque which respects the syntactic structure of the TL. 2. A structural calque, as in the second example below, which introduces a new construction into the language. Procedure 3. A literal translation. Literal, or word-for-word translation, is the direct transfer of a SL text into a grammatically and idiomatically appropriate TL text in which the translator's text is limited to observing the adherence to the linguistic servitudes of the TL. Procedure 4. Transposition. The method called transposition involves replacing one word class with another without changing the meaning of the message. Besides being a special translation procedure, transposition can also be applied within a language. Procedure 5. Modulation. Modulation is a variation of the form of the message, obtained by a change in the point of view. This change can be justified when, although a literal or even transposed translation results in a grammatically correct utterance, it is considered unsuitable, unidiomatic, or awkward in the TL. Procedure 6. Equivalence. We have repeatedly stressed that one and the same situation can be rendered by text using completely different stylistic and structural methods. In such cases, we are dealing with the method which produces equivalent text. The classical example of equivalent is given by direction of an amateur who accidentally hits his finger with a hammer. Procedure 7. Adaptation. With this 7 method, we reach the extreme limit of translation. It is used in those cases where the type of situation being referred to by the SL message is unknown in the TL culture. In such cases, translators have to create a new situation that can be considered as being equivalent. Adaptation can, therefore, be described as a special kind of equivalence, a situational equivalence.
Newmark's translation procedure. Then, the following are the different translation procedures that Newmark's 1988b proposed. 1. Transference. It is the process of transferring an SL word to a TL text. It includes transliteration and is the same as what Harvey 2005 named transcription. Transference and pronoun loanwords transcription is the process of transferring a SL word to a TL text as a translation procedure. 2. Naturalization. It adapts the SL word first to the normal pronunciation, then to the normal morphology of the TL. 3. Cultural equivalent. It means replacing a cultural word in the SL with a TL one. However, they are not accurate. This is an approximate translation where a SL cultural word is translated by a TL cultural word. 4. Functional equivalent. It requires the use of a cultural neutral word. This common procedure, applied to cultural words, requires the use of a cultural free word, sometimes with a new specific term. 5. Describe equivalent. In this procedure, the meaning of the CBT is explained in several words. In translation, description sometimes has to be weighed against function. 6. Componential analysis. It means comparing a SL word with a TL word which has a similar meaning but is not an absolute one-to-one equivalent, by demonstrating first their common and then their different sense component.
7. Synonymy. It is a near TL equivalent. Here, economy trumps accuracy. Newmark 1988 B. 83. Newmark used the word synonymy in the sense of a near TL equivalent to an SL word is a context where a precise equivalent may or may not exist. 8. Trogues translation. It is the literal translation of common collocation, names of organization, and component of compounds. It can also be called calcu or loan translation. 9. Shifts of transposition is a translation procedure involving a change in the grammar from SL to TL. One type, the change from singular to plural. 10. Modulation. It occurs when the translator reproduces the message of the original text in the TL text in conformity with the current norms of the TL. Since the CL and the TL may appear dissimilar in terms of perspective. 11. Recognized translation. It occurs when the translator normally uses the official or the generally accepted translation of any institutional terms. 12. Compensation. It occurs when loss of meaning in one part of a sentence is compensated in another part. This is a professional translation, usually of a new institutional terms, which should be made in inverted commas, which can later be discrete withdrawal. 13. Paragraphs. In this procedure, the meaning of the CBT is explained. Here, the explanation is much more detailed than that descriptive equivalent. 14. Couplets. It occurs when the translation combines two different procedures: couplets, triplets, quadruplets combine 2, 3, or 4 of the above-mentioned procedure respective for dealing with a single problem. 5. Notes. Notes are additional information in a translation. Additional information in the translation may take various forms. 1. Within the text, and then as an adjectival clause, as a noun is a position, and in parentheses. Strategy of translating allusions. Regarding the translation of proper nouns, Newmark 1988 asserts that normally people first and surnames are transferred. The procedure of transference cannot be asserted to be effective where connotation and implied meaning are significant. Lepiholmi, as quoted in Oduderi, proposed another set of strategy for translating the proper name allusions. 1. Retention of the name. A. Using the name as such. B. Using the name adding some guide. C. Using the name adding a detailed explanation. For instance, a footnote. 2. Replacement of the name by another. A.
replacing the name by another SL name, and B. replacing the name by a TL name. 3. Omission of the name. A. Omitting the name but transferring the sense by another means, for instance by a common noun. B. Omitting the name and the allusions together. Conclusion. In general, it seems that the procedure functional equivalent and notes would have a high potential for conveying the concept underlying the CSC in the text. Moreover, it can be claimed that a combine of these strategies would result in a more accurate understanding of the CSC than other procedures. Various strategies opted for by translators in rendering allusions seem to play a crucial role in recognition and perception of connotation carried by them. It seems necessary for an acceptable translation to procedure the same. In other words, a competent translation is advised not to deprive the TL reader of enjoying or even recognizing the allusion either in the name of fidelity or brevity. It can be claimed that the best translation method seems to be the one which allows translators to utilize notes. Furthermore, employing notes in the translation, but as a translation strategy and translation procedure, seems to be indispensable so that the foreign language readership could benefit from the text as much as the ST readers do.